In a bus stand, a man and a woman were having a conversation. The woman, Chea, told the man, Minseo, that they should break up right then and there. Minseo was taken aback by her words, stunned that Chea had brought this up so suddenly. In response, he grabbed her hand and reminded her of all they had been through together. He suggested that now, with their exam behind them, they could finally focus on fixing their relationship. However, Chea rejected his idea, insisting that breaking up was the best decision for both of them. She told Minseo that he had already endured too many hardships because of her and that she didn't want to cause him any more trouble. Chea went on to say that it would be better for both of them if they went their separate ways and focused on their own lives. Hearing this, Minseo grew angry. He told Chea she was out of her mind and that he wasn't going to let her break up with him like this. He reminded her of how hard he had worked for their relationship. Just then, the bus arrived, and their conversation was cut short. Chea stood up, telling Minseo she understood that he needed more time for himself, and assured him that she still believed in him. Without waiting for a response, she boarded the bus and bid him farewell. Minseo, seeing her leave, tried to stop her, but it was too late. The bus slowly pulled away, disappearing into the distance, leaving Minseo standing alone in the darkness. Minseo stood in the dark, feeling defeated. He thought to himself that if he had known how long it would be before he saw Chea again, he wouldn't have let her leave like that. The next morning, Minseo found himself wondering what the date was as he checked his phone. Suddenly, he got up, frustrated with his own sadness and tired of lying in bed. He decided it was time to try something new. Getting out of bed, he walked over to his desk and started browsing for games on his laptop, hoping to distract himself. But as he sat there, memories of his breakup with Chea flooded his mind. Anger surged within him, and in a fit of frustration, he swept the books off his desk, sending them crashing to the floor. Minseo then recalled that 2 years ago, after graduating from university, he had been full of ego, making excuses to those around him, driven by an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. He remembered how he would boast, claiming all he needed was to pass the civil service exam, even though it wasn't his dream job. Despite lacking the motivation to pursue what he truly wanted and feeling helpless every time he tried to study for his career, Chea had never stopped believing in him. She had always supported him, even when Minseo felt certain that she must have been ashamed of having him as her boyfriend. Yet, she never left his side and continued to believe in him. As Minseo scrolled through the game he was playing, he noticed a beautiful character being sold for 2001. He thought to himself that it was clearly a rip-off, but he still hesitated, tempted by how appealing the character looked. The game followed a typical storyline where the player becomes a princess by marrying a prince, and Minseo couldn't help but think that the game was just exploiting children's imaginations to make money. Feeling troubled, he told himself that instead of focusing on the game, he should be studying. Minseo thought that playing the game gave him a sense of refreshment, but when he reflected on it, he realized it was somewhat sad for the characters. They had to keep smiling brightly, even when doing things they didn't enjoy. In that moment, he wondered if the characters in the game were truly happy. The game he was playing, called Princess Maker, might have seemed a bit shabby, but despite that, Minseo admitted he was having a lot of fun with it. After thinking it over, Minseo decided to spend the money to buy the character in the game, telling himself the game deserved it for keeping him entertained. As soon as he made the purchase, he was impressed by the character's graphics. But then, something unexpected happened. A bright light suddenly burst from his laptop, leaving Minseo shocked and surprised. Moments later, a system message popped up, informing him that the loading had been completed. Still confused, Minseo realized he was no longer in the same place he had been before, unsure of what was happening. As Minseo was trying to make sense of the situation, a woman's voice called out, telling him to look in the direction she was pointing. There was a kokorin. She explained that it was believed to bring good fortune if someone saw one. As she spoke, she called out to him, but instead of addressing him as Minseo, she called him Leo. Surprised, Minseo couldn't understand why she was calling him by a different name. The woman then approached and asked if something was wrong, noticing his confusion. Minseo, still trying to figure out who she was, stood puzzled, but the woman questioned whether he was playing a joke on her. As Minseo observed the woman more closely, he thought she looked familiar but couldn't quite place her. Just as he was pondering this, a system notification appeared, informing him that his mission to raise Lena had begun. Confused by what raising Lena meant, Minseo suddenly realized he was inside a game. Lena asked him again if something was wrong, but before he could respond, the system popped up again, congratulating him on completing his first achievement, meeting Lena. It also noted that Lena had a high affinity for Leo, who was actually Minseo. Once more, Minseo found himself wondering why his mission involved raising Lena. Lena and Leo had been childhood friends, and Minseo, now referred to as Leo, retained all the memories of the time he spent with Lena. They were from a place called Nemo's Heart, located on the border of Gaiden in the Kingdom of Orn. In this world, injuries were healed by the power of priests, and Lena aspired to become one. However, Leo realized that this could be a problem, as he had entered the game to raise Lena not as a priest but as a princess. Noticing Leo's troubled expression, Lena asked him what was wrong, but he assured her that nothing was amiss. Leo realized that the primary purpose of the game was to transform the female protagonist into a princess, making this goal essential for him to achieve. He wondered how he could possibly turn Lena into a princess when they were in a place without even a lord, let alone a prince. Frustrated, Leo began plucking berries furiously, unsure of how to navigate the situation. Meanwhile, Lena watched him with confusion, puzzled by Leo's sudden outburst and the reason for his agitation. Leo thought he would likely need to meet a prince first to proceed with his mission. While Leo was lost in his thoughts, Lena observed him, wondering about his strange behavior throughout the day. A few days later, the sky darkened and filled with clouds as Lena was at home with her family. Looking out her window, she noticed it seemed like it was going to rain, so she decided it would be best to work indoors. At that moment, Lena's parents asked if she was going to eat, but she replied that she had already finished her meal and would be heading off to work soon. Lena's mother, upon hearing this, suggested that Lena should take it easy for the day. Lena's father agreed, noting that she had been out all week and would benefit from some rest to avoid affecting her health. He assured Lena that she didn't have to go to the store that day. Although Lena felt a little sad upon hearing this, she quickly put on a cheerful face and told her parents that she would be fine, as she planned to go to the shop just to sit and listen. Moments later, Lena arrived at the shop where she worked. As she opened the door, she greeted a woman named Miss On, announcing that she had now arrived. Upon hearing Lena's greeting, Miss On asked if she would be working that day as well. Lena entered and confirmed that she would indeed be working, immediately heading to the kitchen. She inquired if the dough had been kneaded yet and offered to help if it hadn't. As Lena prepared the dough, she couldn't help but think about how strangely Leo had been acting over the past few days. Normally not very talkative, Leo had hardly spoken or smiled lately. It felt as though he was lost in thought, often gazing into the distance, which made Lena worry about his unusual behavior. As Lena pondered this, she felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She wondered when she and Leo had stopped holding hands, a gesture they had always shared in their childhood. Lena speculated that their lack of physical closeness might be linked to her desire to become a priest, as priests were not allowed to marry. This realization made Lena feel that they had been much closer when they were younger, and she found herself missing those simpler times. Moments later, after finishing her work, Lena bid Miss On goodbye and informed her that she would return the next day. Miss On replied that she looked forward to seeing Lena again the following day. As Lena exited the shop, a man from her neighborhood greeted her. He asked if she had finished her work at the store, and Lena hesitantly confirmed that she had. She couldn't help but wonder how he consistently appeared just as she was leaving, as this had happened several times before, but she chose to ignore it. The man then offered to walk her home, and although Lena was reluctant, she felt obliged to accept his offer to avoid causing any trouble. She thanked him for his kindness in walking her home. As they walked home, the man engaged Lena in conversation, but she was lost in her own thoughts. She reflected that she could only attend church on weekends to study for her goal of becoming a priest, while the rest of her time was dedicated to working to make a living. Doubts crept in as she wondered if it was truly possible for her to achieve her dream given her current situation. The man called out to Lena, but she ignored him, insisting that she would go ahead and that he didn't need to trouble himself by taking her home. Irritated by her dismissal, the man felt frustrated with her treatment, while Lena continued to think about how much she missed Leo. Leo lay quietly in his bed, reflecting on the fact that it had been a month since he entered the game world. Initially, he had hoped this would turn out to be just a dream, but now he found himself with faint memories of his past that felt more like distant echoes. He contemplated whether it would be better to return to his own world but quickly dismissed the idea, realizing that all he would do there was prepare for tedious exams, which he had no desire to face. In that moment, Leo wondered if it might be preferable to simply live in this gaming world for the rest of his life. As Leo continued to reminisce about the past, he was suddenly startled by a loud noise coming from his room. Curious about who had come to his house, he got up to check and opened the door to find a man wearing a cape. At first, Leo wondered who this stranger was, but as the man removed his cape, Leo recognized him as none other than his father. Seeing that Leo was home, his father called out to him and instructed him to follow. Moments later, they were in the forest hunting for animals, and Leo's father had just killed one. Both men knelt down and bowed, with Leo's father then asking the gods to accept the offering and protect their family. Leo, hearing this, began to wonder if his father was a hunter. Leo's father instructed him to drain the blood from the animal's body, which left Leo surprised. Noticing Leo's puzzled expression, his father grew suspicious. Sensing his father's scrutiny, Leo panicked and explained that it had been a long time since he had been outdoors, so he had forgotten how to perform the task. Leo's father stared at him closely, and Leo worried that he might discover he was not the real Leo. However, his father stepped back, approached the dead animal, and began to explain the process. Leo watched intently and attempted to follow his father's instructions. Although this was his first experience with such tasks, Leo found that his body instinctively remembered what to do. While Leo and his father were busy draining the blood from the dead animal, Lena arrived and called out to Leo. Upon seeing her, Leo asked what had happened and why she was searching for him. Lena then asked if Leo wanted to go out with her for a bit. Leo inquired if she wanted to leave right away, and Lena replied that she wanted to go immediately to pick some mushrooms. Leo glanced at his father, who was still focused on his work, and decided to accompany Lena, which made her happy. A few moments later, as they sat together in silence, Leo began to wonder if something was wrong with Lena. Lena spoke up and asked Leo if he remembered something, to which Leo responded by asking what it was. Lena then shared that 10 years ago, on the day the priest had kindly treated her injured father, she felt immense happiness. Ever since that day, she had dreamed of becoming a priest who could help others just like him. However, a gloomy expression crossed Lena's face as she confided in Leo that she was afraid she might give up on that dream. Leo was shocked to hear this, but Lena turned to him with a smile, saying that all she really wanted was to live like this, wandering the forest with him and nothing more. Leo was taken aback by her words and felt himself blush. Lena then asked Leo for his thoughts on what she had said, inquiring whether he wanted her to become a priest or if he preferred she didn't. Leo thought to himself that he didn't want Lena to leave his side, but he also felt she should pursue her dreams since her condition had improved. He spoke up, telling Lena that when he had come down from the mountain after hunting, he had hoped to find her there. Lena's face lit up with a huge smile at his words, and she felt very happy to hear this from him. Playfully teasing Leo, she asked why he wanted to see her once he got down from the mountain. Leo blushed at her question, unable to answer because it felt too embarrassing. Lena placed her hands on Leo's, and in that moment, they looked at each other and smiled, both aware that they were in love. Later that night, the two of them walked home happily, hand in hand. Just as they were about to reach home, Leo suddenly felt something strange and wondered what the unfamiliar sensation in his heart meant. At that moment, a man shouted in excitement, telling Lena that she was finally here. The two looked over and recognized the man as Priest Leslie. Instantly, they let go of each other's hands, feeling embarrassed at the thought of anyone seeing them together. Priest Leslie introduced Lena to two other priests, explaining that they would take care of her in the cathedral from that moment on. Both Lena and Leo were taken aback by this news. Lena was astonished that the priest wanted her, and one of the priests mentioned that the monk had praised her highly. He asked Lena if she was willing to go with them to the monastery, assuring her that if she did, he would recommend her as a priest trainee. Lena felt a rush of surprise and excitement upon hearing this, while Leo, on the other hand, was not happy with the news. He thought to himself that he had never imagined Lena would be able to leave the village. As Lena excitedly told Leo about her opportunity to go to the monastery, Leo found himself lost in thought. He realized that if Lena went to the monastery, she would be near a castle where the king lived, and there would likely be a prince as well. This led him to worry that Lena might fall in love with the prince. He considered another possibility. If Lena entered an educational institution to become a priest, it could be difficult for her to meet the prince. Leo reflected that he had already given up on the idea of making Lena a princess long ago, but with her departure, he feared that both the game and the mundane life he was living would soon come to an end. As Leo pondered all these thoughts, he told himself that he did not want to return to Minseo's difficult life. He wanted to continue living as Leo. Meanwhile, Lena was filled with joy and asked Leo if he had heard what the priest had just said to her. Seeing Lena's happiness, Leo thought it would be better to let her pursue her dreams, especially since she was one step closer to becoming a priest. He felt it was right to support her decision. However, Lena noticed the sadness in Leo's expression, despite his smile. In that moment, she took Leo's hand, leaving him shocked by her unexpected gesture. Lena then spoke up and expressed her gratitude to the priests for their kind words, but she made it clear that she would not be going with them. Instead, she intended to remain in the village. The priest, surprised by her response, asked Lena to clarify her decision. He reminded her that this was a miraculous opportunity to finally become the priest she had longed to be and to receive blessings that would grant her incredible power. Hearing this, Leo recalled Lena mentioning that to gain divine power, someone with that power must instill it in another person through a blessing. When performing this act, more than half of one's divine power would evaporate, so only outstanding candidates could be selected to receive this power. The priest, noticing that Lena remained resolute in her decision, told her that she stood at a crossroads that would determine whether she would become a priest with divine power or a monk. He emphasized that what mattered most was Lena's dedication to God and urged her to reconsider her choice. Lena appeared troubled by his words, and the priest informed her that they would be leaving early the next morning. He encouraged her to find him by that time if she decided to change her mind. After saying this, they bid farewell to Lena and Leo and departed. As the two stared at the departing priest, Leo felt troubled and pondered what to do about the situation. Lena called out to him, expressing her firm resolve not to go, stating that she was happy being with Leo and that being with him was more than enough. Leo realized he had been holding Lena back simply because he wanted to live a comfortable life. He lamented that his selfishness was ruining her dream. In that moment of reflection, Leo suddenly hugged Lena, promising to make her happy for the rest of her life. He assured her that he would ensure she never regretted her decision to stay with him. Upon hearing this, Lena smiled happily. Moments later, at Leo's house, Leo sat across from his father and shared that he and Lena were planning to get married around the end of the fall harvest. However, Leo's father remained silent, simply drinking his beer. This behavior puzzled Leo, as he knew his father was a man of few words, yet he still expected at least a response upon hearing that his child was to get married. Suddenly, Leo's father slammed his cup down on the table, startling Leo. He then got up, opened a drawer, and took out a bag, handing it to Leo. Upon seeing the bag, Leo asked his father what it contained. Leo's father explained that inside the bag was the money he had saved from selling jerky and leather, urging Leo to use it to contribute to his wedding funds. Filled with joy at his father's generous gesture, Leo expressed his heartfelt thanks. Months later, the church was bustling with excitement as it hosted a wedding, celebrating the union of Leo and Lena. Everyone was complimenting Lena on her beauty when the monk approached her, holding a gift. He presented her with a theological book and wished her happiness in life. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lena felt tears welling up as she appreciated the monk's thoughtful gesture. The monk, also moved to tears, encouraged her not to cry. Lena reassured him that she was simply very grateful for the moment they were sharing. Leo extended his hand, and Lena grasped it as their wedding ceremony continued. After some time, the wedding came to an end, and in that moment, Lena told Leo that she loved him. Overjoyed, Leo responded that he loved her very much as well. Just then, a system message appeared, congratulating Lena on her marriage. Suddenly, Lena and all the guests vanished, leaving only Leo behind. Shocked by what had just occurred, Leo screamed Lena's name, calling out for her. The system reappeared, thanking Leo for playing, raising Lena, but he remained in disbelief, unsure of what to do next. The system then displayed the ending for Leo and Lena, leaving Leo bewildered as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. He couldn't believe that everything he had experienced was merely a game. Thoughts raced through his mind as he wondered who was manipulating his life in such a way and why they were doing this to him. Calling out to Lena, he expressed how much he missed her, but his words were met with silence. As the reality of the situation sank in, tears began to flow, and panic set in. Leo told himself that he needed to escape this place somehow, but he had no idea how to do it. At that moment, the system reappeared, informing Leo that he had failed to complete the mission of raising Lena into a princess. The system added that while Leo had become an excellent hunter and lived happily with Lena, only this achievement would carry over. Some of the hunting abilities he had acquired would be inherited in his next game. The system then announced that the next game was about to begin. Hearing this, Leo felt a mix of panic and fury, demanding that the system stop speaking nonsense. However, before he could react further, Leo was suddenly teleported to another location, leaving him powerless to change his fate. Moments later, Leo opened his eyes and was surprised to find himself in a different area, with the ground covered in snow. He heard a familiar voice calling out to him, and excitement surged through him as he thought he might have returned to Lena. Calling out to her happily, Leo was taken aback when he noticed that Lena looked different from what he remembered. Shocked by her transformation, he was momentarily speechless. Lena, noticing Leo's intense gaze, asked him why he was staring at her so intently. Leo, troubled by the situation he found himself in, questioned why he was acting this way again. As he mulled over his thoughts, a snowball struck him on the head. The culprit was none other than Lena, who, in that moment, seemed like an entirely different person. She snapped him out of his reverie, asking why he had been spacing out for so long. Looking at Lena, Leo felt a pang of heartbreak. The person standing before him was Lena, yet she wasn't the Lena he knew. Surveying his surroundings, Leo realized he was now in a completely unfamiliar scenario. He recalled the game, Prince Maker, where the choice of the father's occupation, be it a merchant, a bard, a retired knight, a wandering jester, or others, determined the starting point of the journey. Glancing at a book, Leo reflected that the place he was in was the Aston Kingdom, one of the 7 kingdoms on the continent. Here, feudalism and tribal systems coexisted, with tribal chiefs and lords jointly governing the castles. Leo reflected on the current scenario, realizing that Lena Einar was now the daughter of Dehorman, the great warrior of the Aina tribe, while he, Leo Dexter, was the eldest son of a prestigious knightly family. Although the situation had shifted dramatically from the previous scenario, with no recognizable features, he found some solace in the fact that it was still the same world, the same continent. In that moment, Leo retrieved a book and, as he opened it to examine a map, pointed to a location labeled as Demo's Village. The sight reassured him that the game's world was not in ruins and its narrative structure remained intact. He acknowledged that the capital of the Jerome Holy Kingdom was far away, but as he pondered his situation, Lena suddenly called out to him, startling him with her voice. Quickly returning the book to its place, Leo turned to Lena, asking her what she was doing there. Lena, eyeing Leo with suspicion, remarked that he had been acting strangely lately and asked if he had suddenly developed a fondness for books. Laughing uneasily, Leo explained that he had been thinking about going on a trip. Lane was surprised by the sudden announcement and questioned his decision. Leo admitted that he had been contemplating what he would do if he couldn't become a knight. Lane, with a serious expression, assured him that such a thing would never happen to him. Her face then brightened into a cheerful smile as she confidently declared that both of them were destined to become knights. Grabbing his hand, Lane urged Leo to stop worrying, insisting that it was time to train. As Leo followed her, he reflected on how, in this scenario, Lane seemed entirely focused on achieving her dream of becoming a knight, with no interest in anything else. Moments later, the two of them were sparring outside. Leo launched a powerful attack toward Lena, and as she absorbed the blow, she noticed something different about the way he struck. There was a distinct change in his technique that caught her attention. Before she could dwell on it, Leo's father intervened, stepping forward and striking Leo's foot. His voice boomed with anger as he scolded Leo, demanding to know why he had positioned his foot in such a way and accusing him of employing useless tactics during the fight. Without hesitation, he began striking Leo repeatedly, berating him to pull himself together. Cowering under his father's blows, Leo promised to do better next time, his voice trembling. Meanwhile, Lena stood by, confused and unsure of how to react to the unfolding situation. Leo's father, unimpressed by his son's response, harshly declared him useless and warned that there would be no next time. In a real fight, such mistakes would lead to certain death. After the training session ended, Lena approached Leo and asked what was wrong with him that day. She pointed out that he kept making mistakes and getting beaten, yet he remained silent, offering no response to her questions. Determined to get through to him, Lena stood up and demonstrated how he used to swing his sword, questioning why he could no longer perform it as he once did, especially since it had been his specialty. In response, Leo stood up, took his sword, and flawlessly executed the swing, then asked if that was what she meant. Watching him, Lena was momentarily confused, as he seemed to have performed it perfectly. She told him he was doing it well but couldn't shake the feeling that something was troubling him. Quietly, she wondered what could be causing Leo to act this way. Later that evening, inside the house, Leo and Lena's father sat down for dinner. During their conversation, Lena's father expressed confusion upon hearing Leo's father mention that Leo had been wielding his sword oddly during their training. Leo's father went on to say that it seemed as if Leo had completely forgotten how to use a sword. Lena's father let out a hearty laugh and told Leo's father that it was natural for someone Leo's age to want to swing a sword however they pleased once in a while. Leo's father, however, insisted that this was not the issue. Ignoring the protest, Lena's father cheerfully told him to let it go, saying he would end up discouraging his future son-in-law. Turning toward Leo, Lena's father seemed to gauge his reaction, but Leo, completely unaware of the implication, asked him what he meant. At that moment, Lena's mother stepped in, gently urging her husband to take it easy. She then turned to Leo and asked if he could go find Lena for her. Leo agreed and left the room. As he walked outside, Leo mulled over Lena's father's words. In that moment, he realized what the game was steering toward. It was trying to set him up to marry Lena. This made no sense to Leo, who wasn't even a prince, especially since the central goal of the game was to help Lena become a princess. The realization left Leo furious. He knew that if things continued as they were, he would end up marrying Lena again, leading to the same meaningless ending as before. Determined not to let history repeat itself, Leo resolved that he had to find a way to escape this scenario, no matter what it took. As Leo searched outside for Lena, she suddenly appeared, looking visibly drunk. She called out to him, asking what he was doing there. Seeing her in such a state, Leo was about to scold her and demand to know where she had been wandering around at night. However, he stopped himself and thought it over. No matter how he approached it, the only way to change the course of events was to be harsh with Lena and break off their engagement. Only then could he create a chance to turn her into a princess as the game intended. After some time, Leo managed to bring Lena back to the house, supporting her as she stumbled along. Just as he was about to distance himself from her, Lena's mother appeared and asked him to help Lena to her room. Frustrated, Leo couldn't believe that, despite his efforts to separate himself from her, he kept getting pulled back into her orbit. Now in Lena's room, Leo tried to snap her out of it, urging her to get a grip. Still drunk, Lena leaned closer to him and remarked that he had been acting strangely lately. She then suggested that they drink more beer together so he could tell her everything that was bothering him. Leo blushed as Lena leaned in too close to him. Just as she was about to get even closer, he grabbed her hands, gently pushed her onto the bed, and firmly told her to go to sleep since she had already drunk enough for the day. Without waiting for a response, he left the room. Meanwhile, Lena lay on the bed, her entire face flushed as she blushed from the unexpected interaction with Leo. The next day, Lena could be seen running happily toward the training ground. A few of her comrades, already gathered there, greeted her, and she returned their greetings with a smile. One of the men commented on how relaxed she looked despite being late for training. Laughing it off, Lena explained that she had overslept. As she spoke, her thoughts drifted to the previous night, and her cheeks grew warm. She couldn't stop thinking about how Leo had done something so unexpected, something he had never done before. Blushing, Lena admitted to herself that she hadn't been able to sleep at all afterward. Lena reflected on how the usual Leo never refused a request and was always her kind, well-mannered, albeit somewhat boring, knight. However, things had changed. The flow of Leo's swordsmanship had become unusual. In the past, as his father had described, it was a stable and heavy style that left no openings. These days, it felt as though his strikes carried a deadly intent, as if saying he would offer the bone and take the head, something far from knightly. Despite this shift, Lena admitted to herself that she still liked this new version of Leo. At that moment, Lena noticed Leo, who appeared to be hiding for some unknown reason. She called out to him, asking what had brought him there. Leo approached her and admitted that he thought he might die if he got hit any more by his father. Hearing this, Lena broke into a bright smile and teased him, asking if he had been beaten by his father again. Leo blushed as he saw her radiant smile, thinking to himself how beautiful it was. Suddenly, Lena turned to the others and declared that she, along with her husband, referring to Leo, would be going ahead. Without hesitation, she grabbed Leo's hand. Leo, startled by her gesture, was caught off guard as he realized she was holding his hand. Leo blushed and let out a sigh, unsure of how to handle the current situation. He couldn't help but think that Lena didn't even seem to care about what had happened the previous night. Noticing his sigh, Lena asked him if something was wrong or if something wasn't going well. She then gave him a bright smile and reassured him, saying that she would teach him everything, so all he had to do was follow her lead. Hearing her words and watching her cheerful expression, Leo found himself wondering if he would really be able to let Lena marry someone else. Weeks later, Leo was out hunting with Lena, her father, and the rest of the group. As they explored the area, Leo spotted animal footprints and pointed them out to the others, saying that it looked like the animal had gone in that direction. Moments later, he caught sight of the creature and informed the group that it was there. A warthog suddenly came charging toward them, but the group quickly sprang into action. Working together, they were able to deal with the warthog and take it down with ease. Lena's father let out a loud laugh and told everyone present that he had found an excellent bridegroom for Lena, adding that while Leo's father was terrible at hunting, Leo himself was exceptional at it. Lena, surprised by Leo's skills, approached him and asked if he had ever hunted before. Leo, troubled by the question, wasn't sure how to respond. It had been weeks since the start of the new year, and both Leo and Lena had come of age. They had joined a hunting party led by Dehorman. Leo reflected on how the basics of hunting he had learned in the previous scenario, along with the skills he had acquired, made it easier for him to adapt to the current situation. However, he didn't want to reveal all of that to Lena. So, he simply shook his head and denied having ever learned how to hunt. Lena, still doubtful, studied him for a moment but then gave up and changed her expression. With a playful tone, she told Leo that it was now time to save face. Leo and Lena began heading in the opposite direction from the rest of the hunting party. Lena's father shouted after them, warning them not to stray too far from the group. As the two of them explored the area, Leo suddenly had a playful idea. He called out to Lena, and when she turned to face him, he threw a snowball right at her face. Leo laughed out loud, pleased with his prank. But Lena, undeterred, looked at him with a determined expression and promised that she wouldn't let him off so easily. She then began throwing a barrage of snowballs at Leo. Moments later, Leo was lying on the ground, overwhelmed by the endless snowballs raining down on him. Lena approached him and extended her hand to help him up, asking if he had surrendered. Leo, still lying there, couldn't help but agree with her, admitting that she had won. As Lena pulled Leo up, she suddenly noticed something strange. Without realizing it, she let go of his hand, causing Leo to fall back to the ground. Lena then pointed at the strange footprints on the ground and asked Leo what they were. She moved forward and noticed a cliff ahead. She told Leo that something was down there. Leo got up and asked Lena to wait for a moment while he assessed the situation. As he examined the footprints, he thought to himself that they appeared to be leading downward, but there was very little trace of weight. He concluded that the creature could either be an animal with a smaller body compared to its foot size, or it could be an extremely dangerous animal. Lena, excited by the possibility, urged Leo to go check it out, insisting they couldn't let the animal escape. However, Leo, looking troubled, advised Lena that it could be dangerous. He suggested it would be better to report it first before venturing any further. Lena, surprised by his cautious response, thought for a moment before agreeing. She acknowledged that it was wise to be careful and that there was nothing wrong with taking precautions. Moments later, Leo's decision to inform the rest of the team proved to be a wise one, as they discovered the creature they were facing was a mythic fox, which seemed more like a magical beast than a regular animal. The mythic fox was light and strong for its size, and Leo and Lena would have likely died if they had gone down alone to approach the creature. However, thanks to Leo's cautious approach, he and the team were able to deal with the mythic fox easily. As the team celebrated their victory over the mythic fox, Leo was lost in his thoughts. He wondered why he and Lena were the first to encounter the mythic fox, as it was clearly not a creature that could be slain by just two people. Leo speculated that it might have been an event created by the game, but even as he thought about it, he still didn't understand the purpose of the event. The next day, Leo, Lena, and their parents sat in silence. Leo's father then asked Lena's father what he thought of the situation they had just faced. Lena's father, with a serious expression, replied that the kingdom of Aston had declared war on Velita. Leo's father then added that the royal family had always coveted Velita's rich, fertile land, while Lena's father mentioned that the Holy Kingdom had declared they would not be participating in the war and that they needed to call in troops from Fort Avril. Leo's father, frustrated, responded that the situation was absurd and that he was now tasked with guarding the southwest border, despite the inadequate support. He then expressed his displeasure, noting that they could have lived their lives peacefully, but the nobles were always causing trouble. At that moment, Leo asked Lena's father what would happen to Lena if the war occurred. With a sense of regret, Lena's father replied that Lena would also be participating in the war. Leo was taken aback by this, but Lena, with a bright smile, assured everyone that she would definitely take part. After all, she was the daughter of a warlord, and it was only natural for her to be involved in the war. Lena then added that the situation would be great for her, as the experience gained from being in a war would certainly help her on her path to knighthood. Upon hearing this, Lena's mother became worried, and tears began to fall from her eyes. Noticing her mother's distress, Lena reassured her that everything would be fine, as it was the right thing for her to do as a warrior. Lena's mother, though understanding, expressed that she would still worry about her daughter. Leo, on the other hand, reflected on the time they had gone hunting and the encounter with the mythic fox. He thought to himself that if Lena had been injured during the fight with the fox, she might not have been able to participate in the war. Yet, he also reminded himself that knowing about the war beforehand didn't mean he would allow Lena to face certain death. Leo, looking at Lena and her family, wondered to himself if there was truly no other choice but to witness the moment when Lena would leave. Moments later, Leo found himself alone in a room with his father, who was deep in thought about the situation. Leo stood up and, determined, told his father that he, too, would join the war. He added that he wanted to gain experience, so he could eventually become a knight. His father, standing abruptly, responded that he would not allow Leo to join the war. He explained that Leo's swordsmanship was far from stable, and if Leo went to war with his current skills, it would be nothing short of a death sentence. Leo, however, countered that going to war didn't necessarily mean certain death. At that point, Leo's father, furious that Leo was not listening to him, demanded to know who Leo was to decide what was or wasn't likely to happen in a war. Leo, taken aback by his father's anger, fell silent. His father then warned him that if he continued to talk about participating in the war, he would make sure Leo's legs were broken. Leo's father, at that moment, told Leo that if he understood what his father had said, he was to leave the room and listen quietly without complaining. However, Leo, concerned about Lena, tried to explain his worries. His father, refusing to listen, again told Leo to leave the room. With no other option, Leo reluctantly obeyed his father's command. A few days later, Leo found himself being scolded by his father. Leo realized that his father had not been joking when he said he would break his legs. His father was furious after discovering that Leo had secretly submitted an application to participate in the war. Leo's father reminded him that, as a knight of Castle Avril, he would know about such things and scolded him harshly while physically reprimanding him for his actions. Afterward, Leo stood outside the house, troubled and uncertain of what to do. He couldn't think of any other solution and, feeling trapped, decided to wait for the day of deployment. At that point, he resolved that he would find a way to act when the time came. Days passed, and it was the day before the deployment. Lena was seen practicing her sword techniques, swinging her sword with precision. Leo approached her and suggested that they have a match. Upon hearing his determined request, Lena, noticing his resolve, threw aside her real sword and picked up a wooden one. She warned Leo to be careful, as her body was in perfect condition at that moment. Leo, feeling troubled that this might not be enough to shake Lena, let out a loud battle cry and charged toward her, delivering a powerful attack. However, Lena easily dodged his strike and countered with a swift attack. Leo, though struggling, managed to block her blow. The two continued exchanging attacks, their swords clashing with speed and intensity. As the battle raged on, Lena smiled and remarked that it seemed Leo had improved. With confidence, Leo replied that he had not been idle in recent days, having spent much of his time practicing. As the two continued exchanging attacks, Lena noticed an opening. Seizing the opportunity, she swiftly pinned Leo down and pointed her sword at him, telling him that his bizarre sword technique still had a long way to go before it would be complete. Leo, troubled by how quickly the match had ended, couldn't believe it was over so soon. Lena then told Leo that he should remain diligent in his practice. She added that when she returned from the war, they would face each other again. However, just as she said that, Leo unexpectedly grabbed her by the legs and pinned her down. Surprised, Lena was about to say something, but Leo spoke first, his face filled with sadness. Seeing the look on Leo's face, Lena was initially taken aback but then changed her expression. She gently placed her hand on Leo's face and, with a bright smile, told him that she would return safely from the war. She urged him not to do anything futile, but to devote himself to his practice. As she finished speaking, the two of them shared a kiss. The next day, Leo woke up in bed, realizing he was alone and still without clothes. He quickly checked to see if Lena was still sleeping beside him, but when he saw that the bed was empty, he hurriedly got up, grabbed his clothes, and dressed as quickly as possible. He then began calling out Lena's name. As he opened the door to the dining room, he saw Lena still eating breakfast with her father. Lena's father let out a loud laugh and teasingly told them that they were acting like an unmarried couple. Both Leo and Lena blushed at his comment. Lena's father then jokingly warned them about the consequences of their behavior, suggesting that they might get their legs smashed for something immoral. Still blushing, Lena responded by asking if her father was serious about breaking someone's legs, especially someone about to go to war. She quickly shifted the topic, calling out to Leo and inviting him to join them for breakfast. Leo agreed. Moments later, everyone preparing for the war was gathered outside, getting ready for the upcoming battle. Lena's mother, with a concerned expression, told Lena to take care of herself, while her father, on the other hand, urged her to defeat all of her enemies. Lena called out to her father, telling him to stay healthy until her return. Her father, filled with regret, watched his daughter leave for war, knowing there was nothing he could do but let her go. Lena then turned to Leo, offering him a bright smile and assuring him that she would come back. In that instant, Leo hugged her, surprising Lena. Leo softly told her to stay safe and not get too hurt. Lena, hearing his words, confidently assured him not to worry and added that when she returned, she would be a knight. As the songs of the warriors' departure echoed in the air, they marched off into the distance. Leo, watching Lena leave, was filled with regret and sadness, knowing she was embarking on a dangerous journey. After that, the day passed, and Leo could be seen on the training ground, swinging his sword with all his might, determined to become stronger. As he practiced, Leo thought to himself that once he gained his father's recognition, he would pursue Lena and join the battle. However, as he was lost in these thoughts, the scenery suddenly shifted. Leo dropped his sword, stunned and unsure of what to do. In that moment, a notification from the system appeared in front of him, informing him that Lena had died and thanking him for playing Raising Lena. Leo was overwhelmed with regret, unable to do anything to save Lena. He thought to himself that everything he had done had been in vain, and that Lena had died as a warrior. Worst of all, he hadn't been by her side when she needed him. In that moment, Leo broke down, calling himself pathetic. He questioned whether the Leo from the previous scenario, who had been left behind in the world, had died early due to his inability to handle the shame. Then, the system informed Leo that he had failed to clear the game, Raising Lena. It added that the Leo from the previous scenario had become a knight and spent his entire life protecting the castle of Avril. As a result of his achievement, some of Leo's swordsmanship would now be inherited. Leo thought to himself that the last time he inherited the skill of hunting, but now it was swordsmanship. He wondered if the next time would be even better. With that thought, Leo decided that if that were the case, he would create a path where he could become so strong that he could crush everything in his way to achieve his goal. Just then, the system restarted the game, and Leo found himself sitting on the corner of a street. As he observed his surroundings, Leo realized that the system had brought him to a different place again. While he was looking around, a voice suddenly called out to him, addressing him as brother. Leo was surprised to find that the one calling him brother was none other than Lena. She appeared pale and weak, and with a faint voice, she told Leo that she was hungry. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.